Are we live? No, we're not live. We're just recording. Okay, cool. Всім привіт! Сьогодні наш випуск буде англійською мовою, тому що в нас сьогодні англомовний гість, і ми переключаємось. Hello, everyone! So this is our podcast here again, Вийди та зайди нормально. And this is Diana and
Dasha.
Awesome. And we have here today as our guest, Mark Vілkінс. Yay!
Hello.
So what we do in the beginning of every podcast is we do some common activity with our guests. Today, what we want to do is actually we need your help to translate the name of our podcast into English. So there is a literal translation, but it doesn't make much sense in English. So in Ukrainian, it's «Вийди та зайди нормально», which translates into basically leave the room and then enter properly. This is the phrase that our teachers say in school when someone is misbehaving in class. Then the teacher would say, okay, leave the room and then enter properly. But that phrase, I don't believe it's like a common known phrase in English. So how would you translate or describe the name of it to English speakers?
Yeah, I would like to add that this is not only one meaning of this phrase, because we have like a message to our audience that if you feel like you're not in a comfort zone, for example, in your professional sphere or something, you should go out of this atmosphere, which brings you sadness, I don't know, like depression or other things. You should go out and understand what you should do in your life. So this like the meaning of our podcast.
So it's something positive for you to leave the room and come back normal or proper, because first I when I imagine a teacher saying that, leave the room and come back proper or normal, I felt some rebellious feelings against this teacher, because I think that the wild and craziness is much more healthy and normal than being normal. But the way you're explaining it now, Dasha, I'd like to take a step out, and get out of the treadmill, let's say, get out of your daily routine, which might not make you happy, to have a new perspective and maybe finally a clear perspective on what you don't want to do anymore, is, of course, a positive interpretation of this phrase. So how would you translate it into English?
I think that's a question to you.
yeah, but I think it's already quite, leave the room and...
We've used that ironically, because we do have like bad vibes from that phrase that is coming from teachers. So we use it ironically in the name of our podcast.
When I went to school, I don't know if it's still the same, but when I went to school, there was the same kind of punishment, right? You had to leave the room, but there was no coming back included, It was just like you go outside.
There's no coming back.
and I really like that, I really like to go out and stand. And there was this hallway of our school building, and there was a marble, kind of, I don't know if it was a marble, but kind of like a stone, which also had like those dinosaur snails and stuff inside sometimes, right? Like, those kind of marble stones, and they have to, and I just love to be out there in the empty hallway. There was quiet, silent, the light was reflecting on this stone floor, and I was looking for those shells, right? And then the teacher was on the teacher's, sometimes you were being called back in, but sometimes you just had to wait there until the lesson was over, and then you got shit from your teacher after the lesson. But there was no coming back included. So I'm not so familiar with this phrase. Take a step back, take a step back, zoom out, like to have a new perspective on it. Because we are, so always like in our, if it's a relationship or career or family, we're kind of like so focused on what maybe upsets us that we sometimes totally lose the perspective on what we could change. And this is why zooming out is... No, it's not zoom out like zoom out with vodka. It's like zoom out, and have a new perspective.
Okay, so let's get to our questions. So, Mark, you are, and I'm going to be counting here, and you need to help me add some things that I don't know. So, you are a film director, and you also work on commercial works, commercial like ads, right?
Yes.
But also, you are now here in Kyiv, and you own a gallery, and you're also working on several urban-related projects. And there's maybe so many more things that I don't know of.
If I should introduce myself somewhere with my profession, I would say, rejisseur, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. And filmmaker I did lots of music videos, I did many commercials, and my first big kino, my first cinema, my first feature film is just being released around the world. So I am a filmmaker. But as you said, I'm also co-owning. I have two partners, the gallery, The Naked Room. And we are creating new spaces in Kyiv, but also outside of Kyiv, real estate. From a very kind of a technical point of view, I'm developing real estate, but a developer. But I think this is the real estate I'm developing are basically stories made out of stone and wood and glass. All those projects are stories. They're emotional, and they are, I want to say, cultural. So I think what I like to do is to create stories and atmospheres and spaces, and to host. I like to host. Maybe that would be my profession. I like to host. As a filmmaker, you host your audience and your story in your film or in your music video. As a gallery, co-owner, I'm hosting artists and guests, collectors, people. And in the real estate projects that we're creating, it's called the Reitarska Circle. It's a modernist building which was built in 1985 in Kyiv, and it was kind of in a very horrible way disfigured in the last few years and turned into some strange spa. And we managed to buy it and bring it back to its quite close to its original shape. And our cottage, the Riverbird's nest in Viterchiv, like a little house where you can be in the wilderness, zoom out, and overlook the Dnipro River. So at the same time, and then I'm also at the moment art directing a hotel in Kyiv. We are building a new hotel where I'm helping from a creative perspective.
What's the name of it?
The hotel is called Sofia Hotel. Mm-hmm. Sofia Hotel Kyiv. And what else? I'm now also a little bit of a gastronom. We are also running the bar at our gallery, and this bar is also a little. It's it's not just like a little coffee spot, but it's a little gastro, a little experience place inside the gallery. So I'm doing many things, but I do see them all as one, coming from one desire, this desire to host people. And I have, I think, a very strong desire to make myself useful somehow to the people around me, which I can do if I host, if I bake a cake, if I build a house or tell a story in form of a film. So I'm trying to host the people around me.
You combine your creative and manager skills. How do you do that, actually?
I think if you always need to have manager skills if you are creative. If you cannot manage your creativity, then you are lost. And I think that's something which is I think many very talented people struggle with that, and especially in Ukraine, because in Ukraine I see that there is a strange tension between being an organized, well-managed person or being an artist. So if you are an organized person who is looking for a successful career, you're not allowed to be too creative, too wild, and if you are creative, you're not allowed to be too organized, and you should not earn money. And there's a strange there's functionalities. So I think what I want to say is that if you cannot organize and manage your ideas, the ideas will always stay ideas and not become reality. I'm not a good manager. I'm not a good organizer. I'm always getting really like the strongest energy I have in developing ideas and also writing them down, visualizing them, presenting them to people, but then to structure, to make a timeline, a budget. I'm quite weak, and I'm trying to become better there, because of course I have a team around me. I have people, if it's a film, I have a producer, an assistant director, a location manager. In our construction projects, we have a construction manager and a project manager and so on. But I think what I want to say is I'm not a very good manager, but I believe this is something I need to develop and which is important to be able to do. And I want to underline this to everybody who has great ideas and thinks it's not necessary to learn how to manage them. You must manage them, otherwise they will not become alive. Was it kind of like a...
Yeah.
Did I understood your question
This
correctly?
makes so much sense, and this is so useful, yes, for people who are listening to us, because there is actually that division. Like, you're either super creative and you're all over the place, or you're very like structural, but then you become a lawyer or a finance specialist. And for people, they sometimes tell themselves that they cannot combine the two, kind of convince themselves in that, while in reality you can.
Or they struggle because they don't have a lot of manager skills, and they get depressed because, I'm not a good manager, I have to be good manager. So it's also not good, I guess, because you can accept yourself. Like, it's okay if you're more creative, but if you think that this is your zone for improvement, so please go there and develop the skills.
I think what is, there are those funny calculations, like how many percent do you need to be creative and how many percent do you need to discipline and be organized? And many people say like 20% is your creativity and your talent as a creative person, and 80% is the way how you are managing your creativity and how disciplined you are with your creativity.
Do you agree with that?
I would say it's 50-50, It's 50-50. But I think I don't know how much you want to go into what's going on here in Ukraine, but I came to Ukraine the first time 16 years ago. I live here since 4 years. And I do feel that there is a very, very big lack of understanding creativity and success. So, because there's a lack of role models, there are not many successful musicians, directors, architects who you can look up to. I want to give you a little example. Architect. So in Switzerland or the United States or in Germany, the cultures where I'm mainly coming from. I'm born in Switzerland. I grew up in Germany, but lived for many years in New York. When you study architecture, you study, then you finish, you have your degree, and then you start to work as an intern for big architectural studios. And you serve coffee, you fill the printer with cartridges. You're doing a shit job, even if you graduated already from one of the most greatest architectural universities, but you're learning from somebody who is maybe since 20 or 30 years already an architect, who also learned from somebody who was for 20 or 30 years of architect. So suddenly, with this internship, you are inhaling maybe 200 years of know-how how to run an architectural studio. In Kiev, in Ukraine, people graduate and they open their studio immediately and they start to work immediately. In the beginning, I was very much impressed. So cool, everybody is so young and they're already their own studio. And then I suddenly realized, wow, this is actually not so good, because people then quickly fail, struggle, turn in circles. They basically have to invent, how does it work, an architectural studio? Because you don't learn it in school, right? In school, you learn the creative part, engineering, and so on. But how to actually run a business, this is what you don't learn in school. And that's what I mean. I think it's everywhere in all the creative industries. If you're a musician, if you're a young, progressive musician, you have talent, you go to the music academy, you learn. Doesn't matter how cool this academy is or not, but you learn how to be a musician. Now, where do you go? There is there's no Nick Cave studio, or you cannot start to work in the studio who is just producing the new Nick Cave record. And of course there are some, don't get me wrong, there are some Ukrainian artists who are great, and who we can learn from. But there is a lack of role models in the creative industries, and also no understanding that it's important to first earn your knowledge. Does it make sense? You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Because I find so much raw talent here. More than, really, I lived for 8 years in Berlin. I lived for 8 years in New York, like two of the most creative and coolest cities in the world. And now I'm living here since 4 years, and I find much more talent here. But the talent is very raw, and the talent is disoriented and does not really know how to turn this raw talent into a success story. And with success story, I don't mean Justin Bieber, I mean Nick Cave.
Mm-hmm. So basically, these people are now teaching themselves. They're learning as they go, learning on their own mistakes.
Yes, it's beautiful, of course. It's also what impressed me so much in the beginning when I came here and I saw, I think it was at Closer, right? Every Wednesday evening there was a Closer, I don't know how it was called, Closer Academy, master classes everywhere, different master classes, projects, and like you guys, you're doing this podcast. It's incredible how the society, the young people are trying to develop it themselves, and that's very, very, on one hand, very good. On the other hand, I wish there would be more support and more role models. Role models is maybe a bit of a horrible word for some people, because a role model can be something very conservative, right? Look at your Uncle Jim. He's a successful man. You should be like Jim. That's not what I mean with role model. A role model is just an inspiration.
Maybe you can share your experience, how you got this vision.
So I can talk freely, what I want to say, because knowing a little bit the topic, I was also, of course, thinking of what I want to share. And I told you earlier, before the microphones were switched on, that this is one of my most favorite topic. I'm so passionate about this because I think there are two things important in life. Two things we look back, before when we die, right? One is like, was I in love? Was I loving and was I being loved? That's one question. And the other question is, what did I do with my life? Which is your job, your profession, your career. What did you do with your life? And this question is, sometimes I feel, even more important than who are you spending your life with? Or actually, no, I was now a little bit careful with saying this. I shouldn't be so careful. No, I think to be truly taking care of yourself, to truly love yourself, means to also really do what you really want to do with your life, what really comes out of your heart. And only then you can also be a really good partner for somebody else. So only when you love yourself, you can, love somebody else. First, you need to love yourself. Otherwise, you will look for compensation. You want somebody else to fix that you don't love yourself enough. So how can I love myself? I can love myself by really finding a way to listen what I really want to do and to follow my dreams. And that can be a great lawyer. I mean, law is something incredible. I mean, law is like the basics, the base of a modern society, is that there are laws that people agreed on, and now we need to follow those laws so that that everybody has a equal possibility. So a lawyer can be great. I want to make sure that it doesn't sound like I'm thinking everybody should be in a cave. Law, but you really need to discover what you really, really want. And this can also be being a cider producer or an apple farmer, or being a programmer for an IT company, or being a film director. I believe that there's, of course, some jobs which are not so cool. The trash truck, trash disposal team. But even there, I saw in some countries some crews who looked pretty happy when they were riding on their trucks through the city 4 o'clock in the morning, because they got paid okay, and somehow they liked the special characters. Anyway, what I want to say, I think the most important lesson in school should not be mathematics, biology, chemistry, literature. It should be find what you want to do. That's the key question you should learn as a young human being, to find out what do you really want to do. And I was lucky that I was growing up in a surrounding with kind of a patchwork family, different parents, different mothers, different fathers. I mean, of course, it was my real mother, my real father, but then they were divorced and they married somebody else and so on. But it was, in this mid-70s when I was born, and then in the 80s where I kind of grew up and became a teenager. And this was basically the theme of my parents, to find out what do they actually want to do. And I went to a school, a Waldorf school, where we very much learned to find out who we are and what we want to do. And I knew quite quickly, like the first job was I want to be a captain of a ship. So I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a captain. But then my mother said, once I didn't want to do my mathematics homeworks, she said, as a captain, you need to, do a lot of mathematics and calculate your course. And, and I was like, oh shit, I don't want to be a captain anymore, and then I wanted to be usual stuff, veterinary. But quite quickly I discovered that I want to be a storyteller, that I want to make movies. First I did audio plays. And when I was, I think, 11, 12, I had an old tape recorder. And I invited all the neighbor kids and my siblings, and we created audio plays, which, we had a big piece of metal which was making this thunder sound. And we created all these different adventure stories and recorded them on cassettes. But then somebody gave me a photo camera. I started to make photographs. And when I was 16, I shot my first Super 8 film with my grandmother's Super 8 camera. And I knew I want to be a film director.
Were your parents supportive of all that activity? Or were they like, have your hobby, but also study?
No, I wish they would have asked me to study. They didn't. I didn't study at all. I left school when I was 17. I was running away from school because I was just bored there and thought, especially my father told me, because my parents both didn't study, and I think my parents both deep inside somehow regret that they didn't study, but they were not supported by their parents who also didn't study. And my father and my mother both had parents who were crafts people. My grandfather from my mother's father was made gravestones, and the father of my father was a plumber. And they, in their worldview, only like real work is real work, and my mother was a young woman in Switzerland. So anyway, Switzerland, as you might know, was the last country in Europe where the women got the right to vote. So my mother was supposed to learn how to iron and how to make an apple cake, but not to study. But I think my mother actually, deep in her heart, she died a few years ago, but I do really think that she wanted to actually study philosophy or theology, but she didn't got that support. And my father, I believe, don't know if my father is going to listen to this podcast one day, and I hope he's not going to get upset when he hears that, but I think my father actually would have liked to study medicine and to become a doctor. But they were never supported in that. And somehow, maybe because, you would think they would now support their children to study, but I think it was not really, they were not really aware that they wanted to study. And so I was not supported that I should study. I was supported to find my way, to do what I want to do. My parents gave me absolute freedom there. The only, when this idea defined in my head, I want to be a film director, the only comment my mother had was, okay, my mother hated cinema because it was too emotional for her. When she watched movies, she always was crying, and like she was so, for her, she couldn't really, there was no boundary between the story and her. And I think that's maybe also why I was so fascinated that I want to do this stuff, create movies which make my mother cry. My mother really didn't hate it, is wrong, but didn't hate it cinema. But there was no television at home. I don't remember my mother going to watch a movie during my childhood or teenagehood. So the only comment my mother had when I told her I want to be a filmmaker, she said, "Okay, good, but maybe you learn something to do something with your hands first. Don't you like, you like boats and stuff? Maybe you should learn to be a boat builder. It's a good job. You learn how to work with wood. You learn how to work with metal. You work how to work with plexiglass and fiberglass and so on. And, and then you have something you can always earn money with. And then you can do whatever you want. And if it doesn't work out, you can still go back and do something with your hands. But do whatever you want to do, son, So this was it. This was the only advice I remember of my mother.
Did you take that advice?
No, I think it's a horrible advice. It's a horrible advice. How can you, if your kid is telling you what he or she wants to do, presume that your kid could not be successful, right? You want to be a filmmaker? That's fantastic. How can I help? Let's research film academies together, or... But to say, but should you not be successful means like, should you be a loser? You're my son, you're my oldest son, but you might become a loser. So why don't you learn how to, work with wood? Yeah,
filmmaking, it's amazing. But in case you fail, consider boats.
Yeah, exactly. So I said, thanks, Mom, but no. And then here comes my favorite anecdote.
Okay, so there it is.
I don't know if you have that in Ukraine too, but in Germany, I went to school in Germany. There is the Department of how do you call it? Employment, a governmental Department of Employment, and they have a special department for students who are getting a consultation in what kind of job they could find. So basically, you get an appointment there, and there are two experts, a little bit like our situation, two experts asking you questions, and they write down and different the answers you give, and then in the end, they will tell you what should be your job, in case you don't know what you want to be, what your career.
They decide for you.
Yeah. I knew I want to be a director, but we got half a day of school if we go to this job consultation. So, all right, let's do it. It's going to be fun. Let's see what they tell me what I should do. So I went there. I was 16, and I had to answer all those questions. And then in the end, I said, all right, Mark, so it's quite obvious you want to do something with film and photography. But momentarily, there are no available positions for directors in Germany. I mean, come on, it's not that that this is something you find on OLX, looking for a director. But those professionals, highly paid professionals, told the 16-year-old Mark, forget about it. There is no job. There's no need for directors. But they said, we have a good solution for you. So if you like film and photography, why don't you become photo laboratory engineer, which means developing the photographs of other people, right? Like you would have this white coat, you're in a laboratory, and you develop holiday or wedding photographs of other people. There we need a lot of people in Germany. There are a lot of job opportunities for you. So why don't you become this man? And I was like, yeah, thank you, bye-bye. So now think about it. This was 1990. A few years later, analog photography disappeared. Nobody needs, there is maybe 5 photo laboratory engineers per country. Here in Kiev we have Photo Framke.
Yeah.
It's great, but it's the opposite. At the moment there's so much more available jobs for film directors than for analog photo laboratory engineers. So for me, this is the perfect story, how bullshit it is to think like, where do I have job opportunities and then follow it? You need to think, what do I really want to do? Because then, and this is where you're going to be successful. Because now, so to continue that story, so I was not finishing school. I didn't do any degrees. I didn't start to studies, but I hitchhiked to Berlin, took the Yellow Pages and looked at F. That time, I don't know if you guys still know what Yellow Pages, a big book, right? Before there was Google. And I looked at F, like film production, and went to every film production listed in this Yellow Pages book in Berlin in person, because I thought that if I just write them my applications, they will just, ignore it because there's so many people who want to do that. I just need to go there in person. So I went everywhere, like, knock, knock, knock. Hello, I'm Mark. I want to be a director. And I was 18. I looked like 12, I think. And I want to start here as an assistant director, maybe. And they were... First of all, we are Warner Brothers, which is distributing films. We are not producing here. Okay, bye-bye. But I met Donata Wenders, the wife of Wim Wenders, which was exciting. I bumped into her because the reception desk was empty, and I was just walking past, and there was this tall, blonde, beautiful woman who was kind of amused about this kiddo who was kind of like lost in their office, and Neue Road movie, the production company of the Wenders, of Wim and Donata. And she gave me some advice. She didn't hire me, but she gave me some advice. So it didn't work out in Berlin. I didn't find any. After visiting 35 production companies, I got no job, but I hitchhiked to Munich, because it was another city where you could, where there was a lot of film production. And I did the same thing, but there I was already a little bit only visiting the film production companies which were printed in bold in the Yellow Pages. So I oversaw one production company, which was also in this book, but I didn't see it in the book, in the Yellow Pages, but I saw it on the doorbell sign. I was walking down the street, and there was a doorbell sign, with different bells, different buttons to ring, and different kind of stickers, handwritten, and one said, Olga Film. So funny, because my love of my life is Olga, and this, of course, this 20 years ago, I didn't know about, not 20 years ago, this was 26 years ago. They knew that there was Olga Film, and it was kind of written by hand, and I thought, I don't know, sounds funny, Olga Film, but let's ring this bell. So I rang it, and then this lady opened the door. It was like a woman with long gray hair and a cigarette, and this kind of office coffee cup, with a like the coffee cup was some kind of like a marketing present with some advertising on it. And it's, hello, young man, how can I help you? And they're like, hi, I want to be a filmmaker. And come on in.
This is beautiful.
And then I was sitting in front of her desk. Her name is Andrea Oechsner.
So not Olga.
No. And she had this big glass desk and a big ashtray overflowing of cigarette butts. And I told her, I brought actually also my photo portfolio and a video VHS tape with my short film, which was totally not interesting for her. She was just asking me if I would be ready to work for free as an intern. Because as an assistant director, I should forget about it. It's a very complex job, and I need a couple of years to learn how to be an assistant director. It's not that, I thought an assistant director is somebody who brings the tea to the director and stuff like this.
It's an assistant to the director, yeah.
Yeah, but
it's in the name.
But, this first AD is actually the admiral on set. So I didn't need that at that point, but Andrea was kind of amused by my boldness that she gave me my first internship. And I didn't have a place to sleep yet in Munich, and she told me that I could sleep in one of the film sets. And she didn't give me a contract and no payment. But after the first day of shooting, she came up to me and said, Hey, little boy. I saw you working. I was watching you. So here's your contract, and you get $800 a month. Like $800 a month was like, whoa! And signed the contract, and I was in.
That's so cool. You just stumbled on her office on the street. You just came in and you asked for it, and you got it.
I followed the name Olga.
Yeah. It's destiny.
Yeah. And from there, I just because I really loved, I was, as an intern, you have to clean the floor from cigarette butts, and you have to be the very first on the film set and the very last one. But I loved it. And because I was on a film set, and there were lamps, and there were actors, and there was a camera, and there was a dolly, and it was just great. And so I was passed on from one production company to the next, and I was growing, my responsibilities were growing, until I started to direct when I was 23. And I was the youngest film director in Germany. I was 23, didn't study at all, and my first director's fee was $40,000. It was like my mother told me, yeah, you better learn how to do something with your hands. And the smart guys at the job consulting department of the Bundesrepublik Deutschland told me I should better develop holiday photos of other people.
But you did. You get cigarettes from the floor.
You did it with your hands.
Yeah, I did it with my hands. Yeah. Yes. So for that's all. Like this experience, very much underlines, or this was your question, right? Where is this attitude or this attitude coming from? I think it's coming from that experience. And then I think, the only I think not regret or the only thing which I'm not so happy with my career is that it took me very long until I shot my first feature film. So I did many, many commercials and also quite good commercials, like, not just like eating yogurt in slow motion and saying, no, I mean, some cool, funny, cool, crazy stuff all over the world. I mean, literally all over the world. I was shooting in Buenos Aires, a lot in Cape Town, a lot in Bangkok, in Shanghai, in Kiev, in Germany, Warsaw, Copenhagen, everywhere. But I got a little bit sidetracked. I started to, in the beginning, I said, to myself, yeah, I'm doing this to practice. This is basically my film school, doing commercials. I can play around with camera, actors, and so on. But then my style of life became expensive, and I couldn't go back to earning much less. What you will earn much less when you start your career in feature film. I was kind of like a little bit addicted to the money, but also, me as a little Waldorf kid, I grew up, on vacation, like our vacations were in an old Volkswagen bus on a camping ground, sleeping in a tent. And suddenly I was staying at the coolest hotels in the world, and I was flying business class, and I got the senator status at Lufthansa, which meant I was greeted in the airplane with, "Hello, Mr. Wilkins, welcome on board." And of course, this was like my little Waldorf kid. I was impressed by it, and I enjoyed it, and I just think I did this a little bit too long. I wish I would have understood that a little bit earlier, that working in advertising is just a part of my career and not my career. Because I also never planned, the way I was stumbling into advertising. I hope I'm not boring with telling too many details. And
continue, please continue. We love it.
So today, advertising is somehow even a piece of our culture, right? The amazing commercials, which you look at this commercial and you think, this is art. And today, many young people who are, watching commercials and dream to become commercial film directors and create the coolest, newest Levi's PlayStation commercial. But I had totally no connection to commercials. I had no idea that even direct a commercial. It was just there somewhere on television, or it was in the cinema, and it was annoying because I wanted to see the movie and not commercials. But I was working for a German film director called Roman Kuhn, and he was at that point the most successful commercial film director, and he just did his first movie, and I was working for him on this first movie. And on the second shooting day, he told me, Mark, come on, your job is so boring. Not boring, but you don't have a lot to do. Why don't you film behind the scenes video of this shoot? And he gave me his video camera, and I started to film it, and then we edited it in the end. And when this Roman Kuhn, this director and producer, saw the behind the scenes video, he said, Mark, this is nice. You should direct for me. I said, but I'm 23. I never thought of directing commercials. Let's give it a try. And, okay, why not? And bam, I was in the advertising world, which I didn't plan. But then it was fun, and I stayed in it for quite a while, and I still do enjoy to do commercials here and there, but I think I got a little bit sidetracked. And another thing, which I also like, if we are talking about what would I do differently now, one thing I would have pushed earlier to make movies, and the other thing is, today I would study, actually. I would like to advise young citizens of this planet, if they want to become a filmmaker or a director or a musician, or like also all the creative jobs, it's incredible to study. My philosophy back then was, I don't want to go to a film academy where failed filmmakers teach me how to make film. Because, yeah, it's true. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of the teachers at the film academy are failed filmmakers. Of course, there are also some guest lecturers and so on. But overall, they're failed filmmakers. But that doesn't mean that they're bad teachers. But then I thought they're failed filmmakers. I want to learn from the successful filmmakers on set, which I also did. I had the chance to work for amazing filmmakers. But today I would recommend everybody to embrace the opportunity to have a playground, not because of the teachers, but because of the space and the partnerships you develop with other young filmmakers, that you can work on movies together, short films, and criticize each other's short films, learn from each other, build relationships, and have those moments where there's no financial pressure. I mean, I was able to finance my first few short films myself with money I made in advertising. I was just financing my own short films. But then, as the projects grew, I started to learn how difficult it is to finance bigger projects. But if you're a film student, you have the school has cameras and equipment, and you learn a lot of things which you can only learn, not only, but what you learn more in a more easy and playful environment in the school. So don't get me wrong, I'm super happy with where I am. But my advice to young 20-year-old Mark would be, do study. It's a fantastic playground, and don't miss the moment. Like, not don't miss, because it sounds wrong. Advertising is fantastic. It's actually also important. I never did directed advertising full-hearted. It's not that I wanted to become an advertising, like a kind of a Spike Jonze, like a Jonathan Glazer of advertising. I just did it for the fun, and for that I did it too long, because if you really want to become the best advertising film director in the world, and that's great, and then you cannot do it long enough, and then but I was a bit. I'm staying too long on this topic. I think I made the point, and you can cut it the way you want to cut it. I think today I am at the point that just had this conversation earlier with a friend, where he asked me, "How old are you, Mark?" I said, "I'm 44," and I realized, that's actually half of a life. If I will become 88, it's nearly 90. It's quite old. So 88 would be a great age to die at. So I'm now half of my age, and then I thought half of my life, and I thought, how does that feel? Like, oh my God, I already lived half of my life, and I realized, fuck no, that's great. I had a fantastic half of my life. I don't want to be anywhere else in my life.
It was your dream to open the art gallery, which is called the Naked Room in Ukraine, in Kyiv. What was the purpose for opening it?
It was absolutely not my dream. I never, ever thought I would start an art gallery. No. You know, for many years when I came to Kyiv to shoot commercials here, and I came here maybe 50 times, I stayed in all different hotels all over the city. You know, Hyatt, Hilton, Premier Palace, Intercontinental, Fairmont, and it was always horrible for me to not be able to experience the city I'm visiting through the hotels, because all those hotels are designed in a way that you forget that you are in Kyiv, Ukraine. You go in there and you think you're somewhere else, but not in Kyiv.
Yeah, they're chain hotels. They don't show local personality.
Yeah. So, but all the better hotels are chain hotels. I mean, the Premier Palace, which then strangely became my favorite hotel, which is a horrible hotel, you know, with all those dark S-classes parked on the sidewalk, and
it's scary.
The strange women sitting in the lobby, and there's a strip club and a casino in the hotel. It is horrible, but it was my favorite hotel because at least I felt I am not somewhere in Paris or in Chicago. So when my love to Ukraine, if I may use those words full of pathos, developed during the Maidan Revolution, I felt the first time in my life I felt connected to a nation, which I never had before. I'm born in Switzerland, grew up in Germany. I never felt like I'm Swiss. I need to defend freedom of Switzerland, or I'm German. I need to develop the German society. So quite the opposite, especially in Germany, right? You have this for a very good reason, a kind of a disconnection to the idea of Germany as a nation. But in Ukraine, when Ukraine, the Maidan Revolution was touching me so much, and then Russia attacking Ukraine in this moment of absolute vulnerability, it was disgusting me. It was making me so angry. At the same time, I felt so impressed and connected, full of admiration for the people of Ukraine, that I didn't want it to be anywhere else anymore than in Kyiv. And I was also always looking for places, for reasons to come to Kyiv, for some excuses. Because originally I only came to shoot commercials here, but now I wanted to, I just wanted to be here, made friendships and then new places open up. Kosatka opened up, then Zigzag opened up, and with Zigzag I discovered Reitarska Street, and I realized that everything in New York or in Berlin is super boring compared to what's happening in Kyiv in this microcosmos. And I wanted to buy a building at Reitarska Street to turn it into a hotel, to create a hotel which is representing this new Ukrainian generation I admired so much. And part of this, so I developed a concept for a hotel, which was kind of a bit crazy because I had no idea, no education. How do you develop a hotel? I made a business plan. I taught myself how to make a business plan for a hotel. I developed the concept for the Reiter Hotel. It was called the Reiter Hotel, a cultural embassy, I think. Yeah. And the idea was that, beside many other ideas how to bring together culture, art, and the hotel business, was that when you, as a guest, you check into the hotel, you can choose your hotel room by the art. You know, if you're tired, you can just give me a room. But if you are interested, you can look at the catalog and say, wow, I really like this painting. Ah, great, it's by Lucy Ivanova, great artist. She lives in Kyiv, actually. It's room 23. And then you can go to get your room 23, and there's this Lucy Ivanova painting. And if you like, you can even buy it. And Dana Pavlichko, the owner of Osnovi Publishing, she's a dear friend of mine. She told me, Mark, if you want to know what's going on in the Ukrainian art world, you have to meet my friends Maria Lanko and Lisa German, the best curators in Ukraine. So I met them. We had lunch at Zigzag, and they agreed to curate the art in the hotel rooms. And I was very impressed by those two great, women who were super witty and smart, and immediately taught me a lot about art. But then somebody else bought the building.
Which building was that?
It was Reitarska 15 in front of the circle. This brick building in front of the circle. Mm-hmm. Somebody else bought it. First, I tried to convince this guy who bought it to become my partner in the hotel and make the hotel with me. But he, kind of a tough businessman from Crimea, he was not so convinced by this crazy filmmaker who never had anything to do with with hotels. My argument was always, I lived in hotels for the last 15 years, so I pretty much know how a hotel should be like. So I suddenly, I sold my apartment in Berlin, which was the only asset I had. And I had, this money I wanted to invest into this hotel, but suddenly the building was gone. But Maria and Lisa opened my eyes to the Ukrainian art world. And then still there was no idea to make our own art gallery, but I was at Reitarska, suddenly at Reitarska Street, by side where Syndicate is, Strelecka on the Reitarska, where the Naked Room is now, there was a sign, one of those cheap plastic signs, Prodage, with a telephone number under it. And I said, fuck, here in Reitarska, in the middle of best Reitarska, something is for sale. Checked it out. It was, it was kind of a, not ideal, a gallery. It was actually an apartment on the street level. But I showed it to Lisa and Masha, and we decided together to create the Naked Room in this place. So I bought it. We took all those little walls inside out. We made the space naked. And we opened. There was a big door to the street, but 80 years ago it was changed. During the Soviet times, it was a little kind of a sugar bakery building. The whole building they produced some sweet stuff in there before the revolution, and then it was turned into an apartment house. And this main entrance of the Naked Room was turned into a window, and we turned it back into a door. And this is where the Naked Room was born. It was born out of this desire to create a hotel, again, hosting, people. So, and this hotel, the Naked Room is in a way a small version of the hotel, like an embassy of culture.
It's the embassy of culture.
This is how the Naked Room happened. And we wanted the Naked Room to be a gallery, which is not the typical cold gallery format, right? You come into a white room, strong lights, somebody sitting behind the chair staring at you like, are you going to buy something, or what are you doing here? You know nothing about art. Now, we wanted to make a room which is a gallery where you come inside and you feel comfortable. There's some music playing and have a coffee. There's a little bookshop. And there's no pressure, that you immediately need to look at the art, understand the art. But still, our exhibitions are the most important element of the Naked Room. And it's also important for us to make it clear that we are commercial, because we believe that as an artist, you should also be allowed to earn money.
So, Mark, you're a filmmaker, but also you have these projects in Kyiv that are not related to making films. What is that to you? So you said you were pursuing your dreams and becoming a filmmaker, but now suddenly you're doing these other projects. Where's that coming from?
It's a wonderful question. In the beginning, I was confused. I thought, fuck, I'm a filmmaker, and now and it started when I was just getting the financing together for my first film. And I thought, shit, so many years I was working on finally making kino, and now I'm being distracted with those real estate projects. And then suddenly I realized how much I enjoyed it. And the process of making this film in New York had some very painful moments, because I was working on this film for 8 years. Finally, I was shooting it, and it wasn't that easy. I had difficulties with my crew in New York, which is also something very very surprising for me, because normally I really get on very well with my crew. It doesn't matter how small or big the budget is. But yeah, to make it short, I lost a lot of blood, sweat, and tears shooting this film. And afterwards, there was a moment where I thought maybe I should just forget about filmmaking and just develop beautiful spaces. And that's okay, because I remember as a kid, I was doing it a lot. I was building little huts. I'd even build with my neighbor friends, like a whole little village on the fields. And I was building a dam in the creek behind the house. And the farmers approached my parents because they were afraid that I will damage their land with this big water dam I was building. And I was always, like to build. And so maybe this whole filmmaking thing was just maybe a phase in my life, but maybe it's not really what I want to do. Maybe I'm much better in developing spaces. But then as more I finalized my film and started to feel the final film, as more I realized, no, this is something I want to do. And then I realized that, as I said earlier, that the real estate projects are a little bit like movies, a little bit like stories. They are telling a story and inviting the audience to go, instead of looking at the story, which is a film, to go inside and to create their own story. The Riverbird's Nest and the Reitarska Circle are, I think, very, very narrative buildings where you are a character of a story when you visit it. So for me, it's both kind of belongs together, and I stopped to let those two passions of mine clash. I think I'm both, and because it's connected by my desire to tell stories and host people. Yeah.
Where is the desire to host coming from?
I think it's a desire to be loved, It's a desire to be needed. It's a desire to be of value, for the society, for the people around you. I think it's the best way to feel to what you can do with your life, or what I want to do with my life, is to be useful, to be needed and loved. I don't know. It doesn't mean that I want people to love me in the world of love, but just like that I'm helpful.
That sounds like a very, I think, natural human trait.
Yeah.
For this desire to feel loved.
Yeah.
You live in Kyiv for 4 years now. Why it is worth it?
The cultures I'm coming from are, in a way, ready-made cultures. There's not a lot to add in Switzerland, in Germany, in New York. Things are somehow done. Yeah, New York, the US, has to fight with its own demons, with its past. But it's all somehow done. There's not a lot of space for something new. To make something new, you have to somehow destroy something. But here in Ukraine, I feel there's a lot of space and also longing for something new. I can be much more useful here than I can be in Zurich or in Berlin. Berlin has, 50, 60 art galleries. Every little corner is a new art gallery. I would never create a new art gallery there. Cottages, eco cottage, a little bird's nest overlooking the River Spree outside of Berlin. It wouldn't excite me because there are already many wonderful ones. But here in Ukraine, I couldn't find one. Actually, there's one, the Cosmos House and the Carpathians. Mm-hmm. by building the Riverbird's nest, I feel like I'm a pioneer, and I'm doing something which is really making a difference and really has a positive impact on the society. And I don't feel that I can really do that in Switzerland or in Germany or in the United States. Yeah.
So there's space for creativity and actually creation of something new.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask it because a lot of people, parents, they said you should go out from Ukraine.
Oh my God, so many.
To live somewhere, just to be happiness, to get happiness, to success and other things.
Yeah, so many parents, they're not advising you to go travel the world and come back. They're telling you need to immigrate from Ukraine because it's so terrible and there's no perspectives here for you.
Of course, this is not the first time that I hear that. I'm very aware of that, and it's so sad, and it makes me also very angry. Because some people are very happy about this attitude. The oligarch class, the people who own Ukraine, they're very happy that the people want to leave the country. As more people leave, as more they can, exploit Ukraine. And Ukraine is such a promising country. I mean, first from a very simple, agricultural point of view, the fertility of the earth, the amount of water, the climate. There's so much, which could the Ukraine, could feed, the world with so much. Then also the intelligence of the people, I mean, we all agree the educational system in Ukraine is not amazing, but people are so smart and so sharp, and there's such a potential. I find it sad, that people are being, that parents, especially that parents are doing that, right? That parents are asking their children or supporting their children to leave, learn English, and then go to the United States. Of course, it's sad. It makes me angry. Of course, Ukraine has a great potential. I think everybody also listening to this podcast agrees. I think there's no secret in it. But of course, there is no leadership you can rely on. And this is like a vicious circle, right? There is no leadership because there are no role models. There's no education for leadership. As I'm learning here from my friends, that even in school, you don't really learn leadership. That's not a topic in school, to learn how to teach, to lead a group, to create your own thoughts. And so there is a couple of there's the oligarch class who in a very brutal, egoistic way is leading the country. And in the beginning, it was much easier for me to condemn them. But now I'm suddenly realizing that the people are also letting them do it, because people are not interested in really going into politics, are not interested in creating their own companies, and not interested in developing long-term strategies, because there is this fear, this mistrust, this worry about the future. You never know how the country will look like in 4 years. And so people, and this is why it's constantly repeating, because people don't plan long term. And then it's just about making maximum profit now, just trying to make lots of money now, and then maybe I'm going to leave the country. And this is why the country doesn't develop, because nobody's developing. So it's difficult. I'm missing. It's a vicious circle. I'm missing the right vocabulary. I think I wish and I hope we can also encourage this with the projects we're doing in our communities, that we need or it sounds wrong because I'm just a guest. I'm just a host, and a guest being hosted by my friends and by my community. But we need to take over responsibility for
being such role models.
Yeah, for being such role models and to create long-term success, which means a lot of work, because a lot of people I can see that because there is this a certain pessimism, people are also not working as hard. And people are often very lazy because why should I, work hard if next year we have, one more revolution and the grivna is being, what's the word, devaluated and so on. Why should I? And this is a vicious circle, because then if people are not doing it, then of course it will happen again. So we need to take ownership, and we need to create long-term projects, which is of course extra difficult from a financial perspective, because then there are also no banks giving you loans, and there's no law really protecting you, and so on. But the only way to break this is not, is to create long-term perspectives for yourself, to become leading yourself, leading then your community, create employment, and be responsible for people who work for you, be fair. And Ukraine has this potential, and this is why I think it's very, very silly of people to leave the country. But then there's another nice story which is kind of explaining that problem. I'm not mentioning the names now, just to people who know him. They know who I'm talking about. There is a fashion designer. He was my favorite Ukrainian male menswear designer. Incredible talent. I was buying his things, and I had the chance, to know him personally. I was visiting his studio, and he had a big impact on my own style. And he created kind of a streetwear label, a little bit like an American Apparel, but a kind of an Ukrainian version of American Apparel, like simple sweaters, t-shirts, sweatpants, really cool stuff. And after 4 weeks, it was sold out. And I told him, hey man, great, it's sold out already. I went to the shop, I wanted to buy this turtleneck, but they told me it's sold out. So what's next? Are you now working on your next collection? And, no, because we don't have the money to produce. But you're so successful now that you should get an investor on board and to produce. And no, I don't want any investor, because then I cannot control it. And all the investors, all the people with money in Ukraine are bad. You don't want to. Okay. And I also need to say that he even sold abroad to China. The fashion junkies in China were ordering his stuff here in Ukraine. And I was even helping him there a little bit. Super successful. But he was afraid to let an investor into his business. This is why he could not grow. There was no bank. I mean, if you take a credit for 15 or 20%, you should better rob the bank instead of taking this credit. But then some very famous American superstar and clothing designer, not like fashion label owner, called him and said, hey man, this is I'm following your Instagram, and so really cool what you're doing. Would you like to become a creative director and move to Los Angeles? Yeah, of course he did that. So he is now a creative director in one of the top fashion brands in the United States. This Ukrainian talent. Imagine, if there would have been an available credit for him, or if he wouldn't have been so afraid of investors. I understand that you are afraid of investors in Ukraine, because this is luckily changing, right? Through the success of the IT industry. And so there's a new middle class now, and there are more and more great investors here who are fair, and you can trust them, and they invest into great projects. But this happened 5 years ago. And there, he's now designing for somebody else. Here in Ukraine, he could have created an empire, a fashion empire, which is producing here in Ukraine, creating thousands of jobs and millions of dollars of revenue by creating cool clothing, which is being sold into the world. This is just an example of how great talent exists here, and how the opportunity, not the opportunities, not yet, but the possibilities are gigantic. But it needs the support of all of us, and the trust in it.
We mentioned several times communities and support from people. We personally believe in the power of communities very much. And we've talked with you about that a couple times. What is the power of community for you?
Wow, it's an own topic for itself.
So just a brief comment, please.
I think it's the only way to do it, especially in a situation the society is in here now, is to support each other and help each other and give each other confidence and trust. And I wish there would be much more of that. You know, because I feel like there's the art community, there's the dance community, there's the techno community, there's the fashion community, there's the photo community, there's the, you know, but those communities are not really supporting each other. Like, if you look at the architectural community, they are not really aware of the art community. We started to understand by running the Naked Room that all the architects have no clue about Ukrainian art, and they're also not interested in it, which is very weird because it's so connected. So me, my friends, my partners, we try and work as much as possible in growing our community, because it's the only way to overcome those vampire oligarchs who are ruling the country, by creating community and overlapping community. And like, of course, it's always, there will be always different bubbles, but those bubbles they can, you know, sometimes connect and become one huge bubble and then a smaller bubble again. And I this is a very deep wish of mine that all the talented, longing, ambitious people of Ukraine will support each other more. I haven't seen a bigger generation gap anywhere else than here in Ukraine, you know, that a man in his 50s is incredibly different than a young man in his 25, who's 25 years old. The mindset, the way of thinking is incredibly different. That's very, very, very impressive, and there's an incredible chance and opportunity. But I do really want to be critical there and say, hey, we need to put so much more work into that. You know, we have this Telegram chat of the Reitarska businesses, activists, all the people who are creating something in the Reitarska street. I created this together with a friend, a Telegram chat, so that people can talk about what works, what doesn't work, invite each other to test a new menu for a little event. Somebody could write something about, there's a problem with the neighbors. Do you know a good lawyer? What shall we do? Or, hey, let's think about a new block party in summer. Nothing is happening in this Telegram chat. Nobody is talking with each other. And this is why when we are saying like the Reitarska community and so on, I think we need to be a little bit self-critical. Yes, there is an incredible chance, something which hasn't been since, 1991. But this chance must be taken and must be developed. And especially the Reitarska street with all its different visionaries and dreamers and artists and entrepreneurs, there is a potential that the street really becomes the little Soho, the little Berlin Kreuzberg, of Kiev, but it needs more work.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And to me, that sounds motivating, not demotivating.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you for your how it is called, like for your soul. Yes, because it's great to have such role models as you. As you said that we don't have such a lot of, but for me, this is like you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, Mark.
Thank you for this therapy session. How much do I owe you?
Just share the episode on your Facebook and we'll be fine.
Друзья, всем спасибо за прослушивание этого подкаста. Мы очень надеемся, что англоязычная версия вам тоже зашла, тем более такая душевная.
А якщо ні, то ми опублікуємо переклад українською мовою, і ви зможете це все почитати.
Да. Марк однажды вышел и зашел нормально. Он это уже сказал.
We're saying that you left and entered properly already in your life, that you shared that story. So yeah, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I have an idea for a headline of this.
Yeah.
I think
okay.
something actually what you actually said earlier, become your own role model, right? I think, was it you or you said that earlier? But I do really think that this is maybe a little bit the essence of what I would like to bring across, that believe in yourself and believe in your dream, because only when you live the dream, you can become truly successful.
Beautiful. Okay, and we're going to end it at that. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you soon, hear you soon. Bye!
Пока-пока!
Bye-bye!